Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Burn. I'm your host, at BigBonedFFB. That's where you can find me on Twitter. Thank you for coming in. Please go ahead and like the video, comment so that gets some engagement, subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notified whenever a new episode drops, and share it around. Let's grow this community. Today's episode is a pretty good one. My fellow playerprofiler.com senior analyst at the news desk, Jonny Tooma, is in the house. We have a really good conversation. We talk about the origins of fandom. We talk about how different life paths can lead to becoming somebody in the fantasy football creator space. I even give him a little moment where I go full mentalist on him and totally trip him out and rock his world. It's pretty fun. So, uh, you know, now that we're getting close to the holidays, what better gift to give somebody than to send them a link to this video and prompt them to go ahead and subscribe? Could you really honor somebody more than leading them to my content? I don't think so. Speaking of subscribers, I want to give a shout out to one of my partners in crime, newest subscriber, Robert, aka Rico Suave, aka Kung Fu Panda, aka Bobby Side Jobs. Thank you for hitting that button, buddy. And I'll see you around the block, homeboy. With that, please enjoy the episode, and I hope you guys win. All right, let's just dive right into everything. Where are you at right now?
I am in my shoe vault in St. Louis. This is actually, I'm behind a secret bookcase. It's really one of the selling points in my apartment.
That is awesome. So you can like totally do clandestine activities in your secret bookcase.
There's a lot. This is my work office. This is my play office. Um, but yeah, I like you if I tell you about this place. I swear, if you came in and you didn't know that I was here, you wouldn't find it.
Right? That is awesome. I want a secret room. All right, what are you doing in St. Louis? Did you grow up there? Like what brought you to St.
No.
Louis?
That's a joke that I make is like everybody who lives here seems like they have family and they just hang around for them. But I came here for work like 2.5 years ago. It's been great, honestly. Like it gets a bad rep for like having high crime and stuff like that. And I don't know. I just see people don't think of St. Louis and go like, oh, that's sexy. But it's been really fun to live at the past couple of years. There's a lot of like, it feels like a small city. It's easy to get around, but there's big city things to do, major sports teams, fun stuff. So, uh, but yeah, not from here.
Yeah, okay. Have you ever been up in the Arch?
No, no, we
No.
went to the arch, and then it was like an hour wait to like go in, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't even want to go in the first place. I was with my mom and my wife, and they kind of wanted to, but they could feel that I wasn't dying to do it.
Yeah. I would recommend it. I'm not a heights guy,
Oh,
but
you've done it.
yeah, the elevator ride is a trip, and then there's a thing you do where you lean forward and put your forehead on the window, and when you're up there, the arch sways in the
Oh,
wind. So if you're not like you kind of go back and forth with your visuals and you're like, "Whoa, this is crazy." It's a trip.
I mean,
No,
how many times a day do you think they have to go and clean the vomit up from like people who are just nauseous from how scared they get?
I don't know. And I was lucky enough to go at a younger age because like right now I wouldn't go up. There's not a chance. But so I do know St. Louis. I'm going to flex so hard right now. My uncle was the director of psychiatry at Washington University.
Oh, wow.
So he lived, I started going on vacations to St. Louis in 1979 or 80 or something like that. My cousins grew up there, and I'm going to give you an address that you can Google. put in maps or whatever, it's 6 Portland Place, like Portland, Oregon,
Yep.
Portland, Maine, 6 Portland Place. So if you remember a couple years ago, there were some marches through a nice neighborhood in St. Louis, and
This
there
is
was
literally 3 minutes from my house.
this couple came out on their front lawn with a gun, and they weren't wearing shoes. That was down the street from my uncle's house that my cousins grew up in.
That's
So
so fun.
I my first NFL game, Giants and Cardinals, when the St. Louis Cardinals were there. And St. Louis Football Cardinals. And I've been to
Yep.
Cardinals Giants games and all that stuff. My one of my cousins actually was a Cardinals season ticket holder for a while. So St. Louis, Culver's, close to my heart. I
Wow,
do like
man.
the area.
Fantastic.
Where where did you come from?
um, you can see it buried behind like the pile of shoe boxes. I'm a Broncos fan because I was born in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and then lived there till I was like 15. Moved to Florida and went to FGCU for college, and then started working down there, and then moved here. So that is my lineage. You grown up and lived in like California your whole life?
No. So
Okay.
I grew up in a small I was born in Novato, California, which is just a couple miles north of San Francisco, Marin County, where Jared Goff was born.
Okay.
Also, former Raiders defensive end Mike Wise. And Mike Wise actually went to UC Davis. I live in Davis. My parents were
Yeah.
employees of the university. Ken O'Brien, New York Jets quarterback, was from UC Davis as a Division II guy. So he was in that 1983 draft with Dan Marino and all those guys. And he was a D2 quarterback that actually like became the Jets guy. And there's been a bunch of NFL players that came out of there.
Yeah.
I moved to Seattle when I was 18. I lived there for a couple years. Continued school. I was supposed to go to Cal. I had my transfer agreement in place. Got married to an Arkansan woman. The company that we worked for offered to move us out there to run their little office, their facility, and finish our bachelor's degrees. So I went to Arkansas Tech University, which
Okay.
yeah, Polytechnic. It's a small school. It was great. Class sizes of like in my upper division courses had like 12 people in my biggest
Yeah.
class. It was just one-on-one with the professor. It was a really good experience. And that's where I learned to love the Arkansas Razorbacks.
I thought I saw
Woo,
you tweet
Pig
about them.
Suey. Yeah, they're so somebody tweeted a prompt today, this morning, about like how you rank your teams that you have a rooting interest in. And so UC Davis is like, that's my top because those are my hometown guys. And then college wise, Cal, Arkansas, LSU. Another uncle was a professor at LSU, so I follow those. It's hard to kind of keep things straight in the SEC. At some point around Thanksgiving a while back, my brother and I were watching Florida State, and because we're brothers, we couldn't root for the same team. So I was like, I take the Gators, and he's like, I take the Seminoles. So we would butt heads every year watching that rivalry game, but
Wow.
that was fun. So
My wife's a Gator, and I've always liked CU because I'm born in Colorado. So I don't really like to push myself too much further. Like I like Mizzou now, right? Now that I live out here, it's fun to root
yeah,
for them. To your point, but like my rankings past that kind of shift year to year, like based on the talent that, for instance, like it's hard not to like. You might completely detest this, but it's hard not to like the like wide receivers that Ohio State pumps out and that well, you said you like LSU. So it's like,
yeah.
and when they've got Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson and Joe Burrow, like, why would you not like that?
No, Joe Burr was so
Everybody
fun to
should like
watch.
it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I and that's the thing. Like there are rooting interests. I do love good football and
Yeah.
watching good players and stuff. So the Ohio State, they're fun to watch, and I was all in on Jackson Smith and Jigba this year. Yeah,
Yes.
totally get it. I don't like the horse head that you have in your background, but I've got the silver and black shield in mine, so you
I know,
know
dude.
we can
Way
agree to
more like
disagree.
better swag than me too. Like I used to like. I'll admit, after we won the Super Bowl, this whole I didn't live in this apartment, but it probably would have been decorated with stuff because I was just like beating. I love the Bron. I still love them, but God, it's been so hard ever since we won. Like in terms of just like, I know it sounds like, oh, that's annoying. Like it was only 5 years ago, and we've had to go through it too. But like feel like the Bron. I hate Russ Wilson, like, and just all the like, just it's been really bad because yeah, he whooped us in the Super Bowl, and then they go and sign him, and you're like, now we're supposed to just love this guy after I've been like going to bed hating him every night for 2 years. So I don't know, tough ever since Peyton retired.
I'm gonna recommend dynastyprosfootball.com, Dynasty Dilemmas, Russell Wilson. There's an article that I wrote before the season on what to do about Russell Wilson.
Ooh,
And
I have some Russell Wilson.
let's just say there's a reason that Las Vegas is undefeated against Denver.
Because of Russ, or
No. He's one of the reasons. Here's a good little factoid for you. Nathaniel Hackett and Ejiro Evero, also graduates of UC Davis.
I don't like Nathaniel Hackett. And Evero, is he still? He's not our DC
No,
anymore.
he's the
Either.
DC in Carolina.
Yeah. No, I
In,
mean, I get that
inside,
people gave Peyton crap, but some of the stuff with Peyton, I'm like, dude, I love you. Like,
yeah, yeah.
thank you. This some of this stuff needed to be said, and it's like people are like off with his head, and it's like, no, like it's bad. Like it was bad on Hard Knocks with Hackett too, if you ask me. Like it was like this guy's weird. Like I wouldn't want him as my coach. You know what I mean? Like
He's a better coordinator than he was a head coach. I will definitely say that. However, insider information: Ejiro Evero will be a head coach in the NFL next year.
oh, I mean, he's proved it, right? It's like some of these D'Amico Ryans, like which who I loved as a player. I remember they didn't have his headshot in Madden back in the days, and I was like, that makes him even cooler.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. All right. All right. So you're in St. Louis. You're a Bronco fan. You lived in Florida. Went to Florida Gulf Coast University. Grew up in
yes, sir.
Colorado. That's a lot of a lot of chess pieces working, moving around. What do you do in St. Louis? What's your 9 to 5 game?
So I am in sales. Basically, I'm an account executive for a tech services company. Like we provide advice on making big tech decisions, and I don't really provide that advice. We've got a bunch of smart people who do it, and I help bridge the gap between our IP, the smart people, the analysts, and our clients. And so it pays the bills. I like it. It's a great culture. It's a great company. But like, I never thought I was going to do this growing up. But I did. I became a server in college, and I always kind of had a knack for sales. So it's. I think sales also gets a bad rep, and like everybody should be good at selling something, right? Like if you look at a lot of CEOs, they were consultants, which was sales, and it's like you need to be able to convince people you should run the company and sell yourself, right? And
Yeah,
so it's a really good skill to have. It's a great company to work for, but like you know, I don't want to like say like obviously this is going on the interweb and I love that, but it's like I don't want to publicly say, oh, it's not my passion. But yeah, who thought they were going to grow up doing tech sales, right?
I totally understand. And as a people person type personality, I worked as a grocery store clerk for, well, I mean that's like currently my where I fell after COVID, and never realized that was exactly what I needed, was to be able to interact with people, 1,000 different people every day, create the environment where you have repeat customers and you know people, and if you miss some time, you come in and they're like, "Where have you been?" And it's like, you're a customer. Why do we have this relationship? And that's what sales is all about. Now, we do have similar backgrounds in that when I moved to Arkansas, I was working for a company that did phone sales. And was pretty good at it because I know how to talk to people and level with them, right?
Mm.
So wherever you're at, I can meet you. And I was a counselor for a long time. But we do have more of a connected history. Northwestern Mutual.
Ah,
I worked for Northwestern Mutual as a
wow,
financial advisor, and it was
wild.
the most soul-sucking experience of my entire life.
That's crazy.
Trying to sell life insurance to people and building your own book of business is crushing,
Yeah, yeah.
especially when you don't make any money at first and you're trying to support a family of four.
Oh, dude, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, um, yeah, that was like the hardest thing that has ever had to try and do, right? I didn't do it
Yeah.
successfully. I think it sounds like we were at two totally different points in life. Like for me, it was college, which was even equally awkward if you ask me, trying to pick up to yourself. I mean, that's what the job is, right? Trying to sell your friends and family life insurance and calling your 19-year-old buddies, trying to sell them this idea. They're like, dude, I don't have two nickels to rub together, and if I did, it'd be for beer. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and you're like, yeah. So
But that's the
some
thing about
business.
life insurance is that if you don't get in on it when you're 19 and get a whole life policy that's going to give you exponential growth
Yeah.
over the next 45
Dude, you
years,
and I, we could still do it. That's my point. We could do
you're
anything
going to
we set our minds to.
you're going to look back and go, shit, I should have bought whole life insurance when I
Oh
was 20
yeah.
years old. And if you're going to buy a whole life insurance product, don't buy term life insurance, invest early. And if you're going to buy a whole life insurance product, buy it from Northwestern Mutual because they have the biggest dividends in the game. They run the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They control some of the most wealth in the entire United States, and their dividends are the highest in the industry. So,
I didn't even know that.
Northwestern Mutual Life, uh, whole life insurance, because whole life insurance is an investment. Term life insurance is a bet that you're gonna die. All right.
Dude, I'm telling you, you could walk. When? How long ago was that for you?
uh, that mid 2000s, 2005,
Wow.
6.
Dude,
Yeah.
you knocked the rust off real quick. You sounded like you were in the room with the suit on. I remember.
It's, the brain
Like riding a
goes.
bike.
What's your favorite movie and why is it The Wolf of Wall Street?
Wait, how did you know that my favorite movie was The Wolf of Wall Street?
I didn't.
How did you? Well, then why'd you ask that question like that?
Because it's a meme, like, why, what is your favorite movie and why is it whatever.
That
It's
is probably my favorite. Like, I think there's like some sort of mind trick there, right? Where you led me into it, and like now I can't think of another because that is
absolutely
all.
not. when you
No,
said
I
that when you said that you were in sales, my first thought was, sell me
dude,
this pen.
such a good movie, dude.
Right.
Wow, you are that's pretty slick, brother. You're
it's
like, I mean,
it's all
you could be like
analysis.
one of those mind guys who goes into like the guy who was in the Jets on Hard Knocks and is like, who's going to be in the Super Bowl? And
No,
then you
because
already had it written down.
what I do is real. I I read people and I analyze things, right? So, like
Good for you,
that,
bro.
I I didn't know that Wolf of Wall Street was your favorite
You had
movie.
a hunch. You had analyzed,
No,
you
no,
gathered
no,
the
no.
data points.
Totally didn't. But I thought of the film, and then it's a trope to ask somebody a question like that. What is your favorite band and why is it such and such? What is your favorite thing and why is it this? That's
Yep, I
that's like
got
a
you.
form. I It was just that I thought of Wolf of Wall Street.
So it's pretty blind luck, and you're admitting it. That's pretty humble of you, bro. Because I would be victory lapping the shit out of it.
That's what we're doing in the fantasy football space.
Yeah.
We're analyzing the data that's available to us, and we're planting flags. And I didn't exactly do that, but uh, all right. So, so if you're growing up in Colorado Springs and you got the Broncos are kind of they're a little bit far away, and then the Rockies are there too, and the Avalanche. Then you go down to Florida. There's quite a few sports teams there. What were your was the Broncos like your first original rooting interest? How did you get into like following sports?
So, oh gosh, my dad, rest in peace, best dad ever, made me, not made me, but encouraged me like anything I wanted to play. He would, make it happen. The one I didn't play was like soccer, but I played hockey, basketball, baseball, football. Probably fell off playing football first, but it's now my favorite, especially like to watch. I'd say played hockey the longest and at the highest level. And then kind of I mean I still play. I can skate and do all that stuff. I don't really play. When you were talking about before we started recording the softball league that you said that you were in, I'm like, man, I was thinking that the other day. Like, I'd love to play some flag football in like a grown up league or just something to kind of like stay active and have some fun doing it. But like my point is, I have a Avalanche blanket over there. I really fell in love with the Colorado sports team, so I'm a huge Nuggets fan, huge Avs fan. It's been really good for us, right, the past couple of years in
Yeah,
sports, but kind of felt like a long time coming for me because I think the Nuggets almost had some pieces with like Carmelo Anthony and AI at one point. So there's been peaks and valleys for sure, but I love Jokic. I'm a mainly a Colorado sports guy just because that's where I grew up. But I do think I might move back to Florida one day, and I'm already kind of like a Bucks guy too, because like I just like their vibes with like, you know what, we'll get Brady, and then you know what, we'll get Baker. Like we're just gonna keep trying to like shoestring and bug of this thing.
I mean, if I was staring Kyle Trask in the face, I would make a play for Baker too. So that was more out of necessity than anything else. So I was going to ask you if you take the Avalanche, the Blues, and the Lightning and put them in a bag with a rabid cat and shook it up, who would you want to come out?
Wow, those are good teams. I mean, like not as much the Blues last year, but the Avs still that's my team, right? But I don't. The Lightnings is probably ranked third on that list just because like when I was living in Florida, they just hockey's not at least outside of Tampa and some of those big cities where it is there. It's not, everybody's talking about football and Friday Night Lights and all that stuff. So
Yeah,
um, definitely the Avs, and then I'm going to a Blues game with my coworkers in a month here. So that'll be. It's always that's a great stadium, great team, great culture. So I like watching them. I think I was actually when now that I'm living here, they were in a series 2 years ago, and I was actually rooting for the Blues to win against the Avs, but that was like because I live here, and it's just St. Louis is more fun when the city is winning, if that
yeah,
makes sense. So like it's a temporary
absolutely.
allegiance.
Yeah, and you talk about highs and lows of sports teams, and you're talking to somebody who's a Raiders fan that hasn't seen a Super Bowl win in next year will be 40 years.
Damn.
I'm a
Yeah.
Giants.
If you guys didn't win that game against the Bucks, where like you
No,
were like a lock.
no. I'm a Giants fan, and I have sat through 100 lost seasons before. I'm a Kings fan, so the last 20 years has been absolute torture. And
Wow, man.
and if I pick a hockey team, it's going to be the Sharks. And Peter Forsberg is one of the reasons that I don't enjoy watching hockey anymore because he would just destroy the Sharks, and the Sharks could never get past the Avalanche or the Red Wings. And then eventually, once they started getting even better, then the Blues. So fuck all those teams. I and also the Buccaneers. They ruined my 2002 or
Sorry
three,
about
whatever
that.
that is. No, it's and the Bronco. Like you're on the wrong side of everything, buddy.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
I'm like, the more you talk through this, I'm like, this is just two like sandpaper rubbing together.
right.
It's a whole lot of friction.
Okay, so one thing that I haven't brought up yet, but I will in the intro that I put on the beginning of this is that desk. I should You and I are the senior analysts for the Player Profiler news desk. We both got pulled up out of the mire a couple weeks ago, signed to contracts, and we're rocking and rolling now. A lot of what we do is basically just updating the player profiles on playerprofiler.com, which you can find at Roto Underworld on Twitter. But there does need to be some analysis that goes into it. So you are a YouTube podcaster and you do all this stuff in the fantasy space. How did you first get into the actual ideas of analytics and using data to kind of make decisions?
Ooh, so economics degree. So that's like when you say data and analytics, like really it started as a kid looking at the back of a baseball card and being like, holy crap, like a good hitter is someone who bats 300, hits 40 home runs, has over 100 RBIs. Like it's all, the numbers are all there, baby.
We used to
And
think.
right. Well, yeah, I mean, those days are gone. Now, if you hit 200, like as long as you're hitting bombs. But,
Yeah.
um, so I think as a kid, that's kind of how what got me actually into economics was like the numbers, cause and effect of stuff. And then with football, just like love fantasy football, always like with work as a server growing up, there were work leagues. And but what really has got me more in like the fantasy space of like content creation and analyzing and providing insight was like seeing fantasy Twitter. Like I think it's an awesome space. Like there's certain pockets that like there's dark pockets, but there's really good
Mm-hmm.
ones where like people are sharing all 22 film and breaking it down and giving you. I love the eye test as much as I love analytics. I want to see it too. And so like seeing some of those film breakdowns paired with like some of the visualization charts that your average Joe was putting together, and I'm like, this is fantastic, and it
Yeah.
made me want to kind of like co-create, and it's a very like, in my opinion, the right pocket's a very welcoming place to create and share that type of creativity. You're being creative, you're taking a new crack at how you look at the game, and so I love it.
And there is a bonus. You get better at fantasy football.
Hmm. Yeah.
When you're reading those people and you're following their content that they're creating and you're creating your own, then you start to like do your own modeling and that kind of thing, come up with your own little theories and stuff like that. And it's just the beginning for us, man. We're on the come up. So how did you get into fantasy football in the first place?
I think it was like a work league, just somebody like at my work being like, "Hey, we're all playing," and I was like, "Well, I've always loved football ever since like I'd go to I only went to a couple Broncos games, but always listened and watched the games." And so the second someone kind of explained it to me, I had to know more. And then after that, I don't think I won my first year, but I was always pretty apt. And I knew I was like, uh, I don't know, better than the average Joe who didn't know all the players. Like I also, the other wrinkle is Madden. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you play a lot of Madden just for fun, which I did all growing up, then you knew who like the third string defensive tackle for the
Right.
Chargers was. And
Yeah.
like you start to really have that understanding of what that offense is going to look like and that defense is going to look like and who all the players are, not just on the wide receivers but the lines and their strength, right? Like all those
Mm-hmm.
stats and just digging into that. So uh
The carryover from Madden to fantasy is iffy at best. The carryover from fantasy to Madden is pretty cool. So, as a Madden veteran asking another Madden veteran, have you ever taken your fantasy football team and created a mutt team out of that?
wow. I mean, Mutt is kind of like you got to put in the work to get the
Oh,
players, right?
okay,
You
then
know what
then
I mean?
franchise. Have you ever
No,
have
but
you
I
ever
haven't
taken
even,
your
to be honest, I hadn't even thought of it. Regardless, I love the idea, but I'm like, Mutt would be better because, like, to your point, you kind of work, you put them in. They're not 99s, right? Like, but they're the best card you can get of the players that you draft. It's brilliant, but no, I've never done that.
If you do it in a franchise, it's actually a good way to kind of like get ahead of rookie drafts, especially when you're. So one year I had a team that had Travis Etienne, Justin Fields, and Kyle Pitts, and Micah Parsons on the other side of the ball in a franchise mode. They were all playing in the silver and black, but but I went into that next fantasy season going, I really want Justin Fields because he's been so good for me in Madden, and that it was. I love the crossover that you get, but yeah, take a fantasy roster that you love, go into the franchise mode, and then build that fantasy roster in franchise mode.
I love it.
It's hard to sustain because you'll do ad drops on one side and you'll lose players in the Madden side, but for that
True.
short period of time it's perfection because you can play your guys. And yeah, so um that's on the fantasy football side. You started playing a redraft.
Yes, 100%.
How long have you been playing fantasy football?
That was about 10 years ago.
Okay,
It was,
so right around year 10 you start kind of finding deeper dives into like what's going on and how to get better and everything. So, in terms of getting out of the redraft mode, what was your first dynasty league?
last year, just like some buddies from Colorado, complete teardown. I had to inherit one because my buddy was like, "You should do it. It's fun." Um, the guy had just taken Kenny Pickett with the first pick in the startup. In the first round of the super flex, he picked Kenny Pickett back then. It was like it was just the draft had ended like a couple months into the season. He stopped playing.
Of
So
course.
that one I'm still in the process of rebuilding. But since then, I built like a couple really hefty dynasty leagues. Joined one that was less of a rebuild, and then have like two others that I did startups. So it's definitely a newer muscle still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I'm still struggling with it too is like turning off flipping from dynasty to redraft.
Mhm.
But I feel like some of the players, like you and I were talking about how great Laporta has been. Like I picked him up in redraft because I just couldn't turn off dynasty mode with him. I'm like, the guy's gonna produce. Like I've done all the homework. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, and it does prompt that, and so you do know a little bit more than if you're getting into a redraft league with casual players and stuff like that,
yeah,
and especially if you're on NFL.com or ESPN.com, Yahoo, that kind of thing. It's interesting. I had the thought earlier that one of these things that gets us into content creation is that competitive drive and wanting to find that edge. How can I find a little bit more about these players and use that to my advantage to secure bragging rights or to win the pot at the end of the year or whatever? That kind of disregards the fun element of it, though. So, for example, in my Dynasty Home League, in the 2022 rookie draft, one of my big targets going through the season was Traylon Burks, and I knew that he was going to have a first round grade on him in rookie drafts, and he had the statistical profile, he had the early breakout, he had the dominator rating, all of those metrics that we look at.
Razorbacks guy, right?
Well, that's the only reason that I really knew about him, but in doing the analysis, like he checked the boxes, right?
Yeah.
Didn't know that he was going to run into some concussion issues and things like that. The route tree was limited at Arkansas, and I knew that, and I knew he wasn't going to be the 101, but I still wanted to get out of the first round with him. And then in that same draft, Brees Hall, who, when you look at rookie profiles entering the league, he was the best running back since the boxes that Saquon Barkley checked. He was he had an historic rookie profile. So I knew that I wanted Brees Hall. So we go to the day of the draft. It's at my childhood home. We've got most of the league there. We've all got our laptops and phones and stuff like that. I had been working deals. I didn't have a great season leading up to that, so I had a pretty high like natural pick for myself. A buddy of mine I knew wanted to like get out, and I dangled Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I drafted. He gave me a pick for Amon-Ra. So now I have three pretty high picks. I got another buddy who's a Steelers fan. And I knew that if I messed around and I had the one and the two, I didn't have to take Brees Hall with the consensus number one. And nobody else wanted Burks, so I could wait later in the draft and take him at the 6 or the 5 or 7 or whatever it was that I had in that middle of the first round. So with the 101 of the 22 rookie draft, I took George Pickens just to fuck with him.
Oh, because he's a Pittsburgh fan. Wild.
Right. So the best part was that my buddy and I, who are making the trade, were in my kitchen and we're like, so you want to do this? You want to? Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. Okay. And then I get on, and then here you go. And we finish the trade. As I'm walking back around into where I'm sitting with my laptop, you hear the dings going off, ding, ding, ding. And oh shit, from around the house. And, and then I sit down and I hit George Pickens, and my buddy, the Steelers fan, motherfucker. It was the greatest feeling to just completely subvert all expectations just for fun.
Wow.
And I wound up the high upside guy. Hopefully I messed with the sleeper algorithm a little bit because that's a higher ADP than he was going. And so
Wow.
we have to keep that element of fun. So, what is the funnest thing that you get out of playing fantasy football that's not necessarily like won the league, bragging rights, let's watch the loser punishment, whatever? What drives you? What burns you?
So I think it's the idea of being slept on. Like, it's not even the bragging rights. My favorite championship I ever won was my wife. I convinced her I couldn't get enough leagues. I was only in like two redraft leagues last year and I wanted to do one more. And I was like, "Hey, you should ask your sales team of all guys cuz she's in sales too if they want to do a league and see if anybody bites at it." And they're all like, "Yeah, sounds great. Let's do it. $50 buy-in redraft league." I drafted the team for her. I managed it in the shadows all year, and like we won. And so like just giving her that feeling and like being a part of that with her and kind of like a little bit educating her along the way of some of the decisions we were making, so she knew enough to kind of like talk crap and be dangerous. And like I think most of the guys caught on, but part of me thinks that, like, I don't know. There's 10% of me that's like, maybe they really think my wife kicked their ass, and
Yeah,
it's the greatest feeling in the world. So, like, I don't have a perfect answer for you, but
that is a
moments
perfect
like
answer.
that is like exactly why I love fantasy football.
That's a perfect answer, and I absolutely relate. It's not on the fantasy side, it's still on the NFL side. But my girlfriend works at a mine in the Arctic Circle in Alaska.
Wow.
Okay. So she goes up there. She's in the dorms on the campsite. It's called a camp, but it's not like they're camping. It's a big dorm building right next to this big pit mine where they're pulling lead out of the ground. And because it's the mining industry, most of the people there are men. It's a severely male dominated industry, and everybody's into football. So they do a pick 'em pool every week. So she does the buy in. She sends me the pick 'em, and I do the pick 'em. And then she
Nice.
walks around the she walks around the camp going, I don't even know. I like the color of their Bengals are tigers, right? So every time we win, it's like this is the best. Like totally under the radar. They're underestimating this, this lady in the office because they're,
Yeah.
totally misogynistic and all that stuff. And she just like every once in a while, if I hit right, she'll wipe the floor with them, and they're like, "God damn it, we lost her again."
And she just thinks that because cat she likes Bengals.
Yeah.
She likes Tigers.
All right. So I know you have to get to dinner. I'm gonna get you out of here. But at the end of my podcast, I like to do a power rankings. So we're gonna go 5 to 1, and I gave you options for categories, and the category that you picked were comedic actors in film. So we'll go 5 to 1. We can do it one of two ways. Either you can do one, or I can do one, or we can go 1, 2, 3, and then give our fifth at the same time, and then or so however you want to do it. What do you think?
Let's do the first one because
Less
like
chaos.
I'm pretty convinced that you're not going to have any of mine because mine are like trash, like commercial act. You know what I mean? It's all. I feel like you have a bone for comedy, so your guys are going to be like more salt
Ah,
of the earthy. I don't know. We'll see.
I might say that there's a chance of that for my number one, but it's not like I'm pulling red buttons or like you know, uh, was George Burns out of like the ether or anything. This is
Yeah, I don't know who that
contemporary,
is.
buddy.
That's why I would be like,
Right? This is contemporary. Okay, so who's your number five?
my number five, and this is we talked about this a little bit before the show. This is like more like honorable. I was like, what goes into making a good comedic actor? This guy's in like so many of my favorite funny movies. It's not that he's the funniest guy, just Jonah Hill. Also, you mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. What a great performance in that on a serious note,
Yes,
right? So he's got acting chops. He is in some of the funniest movies I've ever seen across the board. Strange Wilderness. I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but like just belly laugh
I
funny.
think so.
They,
Now,
they're they go out in the woods looking for Sasquatch. It's just ridiculous.
yes, I have seen that around when it first came out. Jonah Hill. I like film a lot, and mid '90s is one of my favorite films. It's his first project,
Oh, interesting.
and
Didn't know that.
also his sister was in Booksmart, which is basically super bad for girls, and that was great. So your number five is Jonah Hill. For me because I always forget. And then I was going to say something else, and I totally forgot it. Okay, my number five, I am riding strong with Jack Black. School of Rock, Nacho Libre. Uh, God, there's so many Tenacious D stuff, and I'm currently in a sketch where I play a Jack Black fan. I get to sing tribute to everybody in the audience.
Nice,
So yeah, Jack Black's my number five. He is one of my
dude.
idols.
I had just watched School of Rock. I think that movie is severely, criminally underrated. It is awesome. The music is fire. He's hilarious. He's got a certain kind of particularness to him.
Yeah,
It actually rubs my wife like really weird. She's like, "Eh, he's kind of gross," and I'm like, "I know, but that's why he's like so he's him. He's himself." And yeah, Tenacious D. Holy crap, that movie is like so funny. I just yeah, that's another one I showed her. She's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, what do you mean? I just laughed my ass
he's a
off for like
genius. Yeah. So Jack Black's my number five. Orange County is another one of his that's criminally underrated too. Okay.
so he wasn't on my list, but I had thought of him. He was like in the mix of people I thought of.
Yeah, he's
Number
up there.
four, this is like more based on um obviously The Office, but like which is a TV show, but Steve Carell. Like I think
Okay.
I just think he's so funny as Michael Scott in that. But then also The 4-Year-Old Virgin is
Hmm.
one of my favorite comedies of all time.
Yeah,
This
Jonah Hill
one's
again.
yeah, yeah, right. Like
Yeah,
he's hilarious in that small bit in there that he is. He just
yeah.
wants to buy the shoes. Why can't I buy them here? Like, uh,
Kelly
but
Clarkson. Yeah, Steve Carell is great.
Steve Carell's pretty good, yeah, but less like his whole body of work and more just I think the fact that he was so consistent on The Office over time shows me that, like, yeah, maybe he doesn't have 30 movies that are hilarious, but he's funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's also pretty fantastic in the a movie that he did with my number four, uh, Anchorman, Ron
Oh my
Burgundy,
god, yeah, yeah.
which Jack Black is also in. He plays Steve Carell plays Brick, and so yeah, I'm taking Will Ferrell with my number four.
Okay. So now number three. This one for me is like a little more adventurous, or because I used to think it was weird. Like this guy was like, I think Vince Vaughn's hilarious, and I'm like, really? I don't see it. Like he's kind of just like, eh. But Vince Vaughn's hilarious, and he's in a lot of funny movies. Good actor, one of my favorites.
Yeah, Rudy is
Grew up,
phenomenal, and then the is it interns
yeah,
or yeah
internship or something like that.
the internship where they were at Google. That is a fantastic movie. I love it. I love it
Yeah,
very
I
much.
mean, definitely Dodgeball's like the first and most immediate one, but then like
Okay.
Wedding Crashers is hilarious too. Like between those two, like I could watch those pretty frequently and
Wedding
just
Crashers is amazing,
yeah.
including my hall pass, Isla Fisher. Okay. Uh, also, don't we're football here, so don't sleep on Rudy. Um,
Yeah.
okay, so who's your number three? Oh, did you just say
No, he
Vince
was
Vaughn
number
is your
three.
number
So
three?
who's your number
Okay.
three?
Uh, I don't know your wife's name, but tell her that it's not your fault. I'm keeping you a little bit late.
Oh, good,
Okay.
good.
Okay, so my number three is going to be Eddie Murphy,
Yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop. Uh, Basically, everything that he did in the '80s is just fantastic, and I will watch all of those things over and over again. And I appreciate him now, even though I'm not as big a fan of the movies he's in recently. Started right around Flubber and Daddy Daycare. I started kind of like,
Norbit,
yeah, I
Haunted
was,
Mansion.
yeah, that I had already sold my Eddie
Yeah.
Murphy stock by then. But Beverly Hills Cop and Beverly Hills Cop 2 are two of my favorite movies of all time. They're
He's kind of
totally,
badass in that, isn't he? He's like a little
yes,
more edgy. Yeah. That's
yeah.
a good one.
They gave him room to cook.
um, number two for me, really all off of one movie and a comedy show again here, but this guy almost earned number one, and that's Dave Chappelle.
Oh, boom.
Is like easily probably the funniest movie I've ever seen. And didn't he like? I don't know if he directed it, but I think he wrote it.
He
Like,
wrote it.
yeah, he's a comedy genius, and
Yeah,
he's also good at delivering it, and he's hilarious. Yeah.
yeah. And Jim Brewer's great in that movie
Like,
too.
is he the one who's like, yeah, man, or what? Who's
Sour cream
coming
and
with
onion
me?
chips, man.
Who's coming with me, man?
Yeah, yeah. If you can, like, if you get Peacock, dive into some like old Saturday Night Live stuff. Like Google Jim Brewer Saturday Night Live
Okay.
episodes.
Yeah,
He
he is
does this.
hilarious.
He does this character called Goat Boy, who when he talks like this. It's awesome. Okay, so my number two is going to be Mr. James Carey, Canadian Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, one of the movies that I've watched the most that has made me laugh the hardest, and it is always good. And of course, he had one of the greatest runs in the history of movie making with the Ace Ventura movies and the Cable Guy and The Mask and on and on and on. I mean, we could be here till 6:30 your time just talking about Jim Carrey movies. So he's my number two.
Yeah, he's good. When I watched Eternal Sunshine of the
Hmm.
Spotless Mind on a plane the other day, he's got chops too, right? Like he can
Yeah,
do. Some of these guys are just funny, but like he's a good actor. That's like a it's a good like movie. But okay, number one, you already listed him, but I wasn't gonna. I just figured I wouldn't spoil it for everybody. I don't know how he can't be everybody's number one. I think the guy is just painfully funny. Will Ferrell, Step Brothers, Anchorman. I think the other guys was good. Like
yeah,
he's obviously kind of started to fall, but like Night at the Roxbury. I mean, there's just so many of them that like he's just my favorite. So that's my guy. That's my fantasy ride or die, but movie edition. And I actually would have already moved off of them, kind of like Matthew Berry did from Eckler to Sun God. So,
Did we just become best friends? Okay. All right. So my number one, and this is gonna like take people back a little bit. I have a theory that comedic actors who are trained in comedy and eventually move into dramatic roles are better than people who are just classically trained dramatic actors. And the reason that I began with this theory was because of my number one, and his name is Robin Williams.
yeah, I was wondering if he would be on your list because I wanted to ask you this question. I was like, I
Number
bet.
one, I was in on Mork. I watched Mork and Mindy when I was a child. One of my favorite movies ever, which is just genius by a genius filmmaker and a genius performance from Robin Williams, is Popeye. If you haven't seen it, see it as soon as you get a chance. And yeah, he is. I mean, up until like World's Greatest Dad. Like everything he did was fantastic, and the dramatic stuff, Goodwill Hunting and Patch Adams, and like all these movies. Watch The World According to Garp. Do a deep dive on Robin Williams films, and you see the range that he has as a person and an actor. He's one of the most creative stand-up comedians on stage of all time. He's a brilliant improvisationalist. If you like do a YouTube deep dive and see some of his talk show hosts guest spots. Him and Jonathan Winters improvising together, they're incredible. So Robin Williams is going to be my number one. I'm going to throw in an honorable mention in the vein of comedic people who move into dramatic roles. Now, I was just talking to comedian Billy Wayne Davis about this last night. There's a film, he brought up Pentecostal preachers snake handling, and there's a film that is about Pentecostal preachers in a snake handling church. Walton Goggins, who is part of the Danny McBride empire at this point,
Mm,
um, he plays a Pentecostal preacher. He's got a daughter who's betrothed to another boy. She falls in love with a different boy. The actress is the daughter of Leah Thompson from Back to the Future. She and her sister are like pretty big right now. But one of the actors in it is Jim Gaffigan. And Jim Gaffigan, who is an absolute stand up comedian, he's a clean stand up comedian and he's had his own sitcoms before. Super funny guy. He plays a dramatic role and he's phenomenal. So
mm.
it's a good kind of Romeo and Juliet story set in the hills of Eastern Kentucky and this, Pentecostal snake charming world. And it's absolutely watchable. I've watched it a couple times just because I loved it so much the first time. Not many people know about it. It was like fully independent, and but it's got a great cast and it's a great story, and highly recommended. So Jim
Jim
Gaffigan is in that.
Gaffigan, honorable mention. For me, Paul Rudd, John C.
There you
Riley,
go. John C.
Danny
Riley, of
McBride.
course.
I added Danny McBride after you said him just because that guy's hilarious. And some of
Yes.
the roles he plays is just perfect.
Oh, Eastbound and Down, and then John C. Riley. You got Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's so many.
Step
Uh,
Brothers and
yeah,
Talladega Nights, like he pulls
yeah.
those movies as much as Will Ferrell does. Like he deserves his credit too, for sure.
The funniest part about my conversation last night with Billy Wayne Davis, when I brought up Them That Follow, when I said you should watch it because Jim Gaffigan's in it, he goes, "Oh, I was just with Jim Gaffigan last night.
Small flex.
They were just hanging out." Like, all right, okay. So Jonny, it's been great. I will see you in the ether as we're like exchanging stories and stuff like that. I want to get something cooking with you, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I think all of my 7 followers are going to have a good time watching this one.
Hell yeah.
And
Maybe an 8 after we're done, huh?
yeah,
Oh my
hopefully
guy, some love.
we'll get some more subscribers. We'll get this out to Bradley and see if he can like boost the signal a little bit. And
Ooh.
you got your following and stuff. So we'll do something again soon. And go have dinner. Give your wife a hug.
All right.
All right. And for everybody else, thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening to me and Jonny. And I hope you win.